Well, today I got inundated with some old computer stuff, and I thought before it goes to the recycle center, we'd immortalize it on video, on HD video, just to remember it. And it's all kinds of technology, not just computers. I've got a box full of random stuff here. It's all full of memories. It's a good friend of mine who is moving and had to clear out all the stuff in his house. And that's when you really have to decide what you want to keep and what you want to throw away. And let's just start from the right and work our way to the left, the opposite for you. It's my right. So starting here, we've got a docking station for a laptop. You used to be able to take your laptop, put it into a docking station. It provides power. And on the back, you would have a parallel port for a printer, a serial port for a mouse. Then you had PS2 ports for keyboard and mouse, along with a MIDI port, audio ports for audio in, audio out, and line in. And, oh, this is a VGA port here. This is the serial port over here. And then something called ID setup, which I guess, I'm not sure what that's for. But the idea was, if you were a business person, you take your laptop on the go, and when you get back to the office, you didn't have to have a separate desktop. You'd set your laptop into the posts here. There are little indentations in the laptop that this would be recessed into, and then it would lock it into place. And then you basically had your desktop with your external keyboard, external mouse, external monitor, and the lid stayed closed on the laptop. And that's what the docking stations were. This is a Toshiba Enhanced Port Replicator model PA2711U. Let me give you a little close-up of this here so you can see it a little better. But this is what they look like, kind of in the shade now, but that was the back of it. There's all of the information there. And a big old scanner we've got right here. This is an HP ScanJet 4100C. This is where we run into these situations where the hardware still works, but there's no drivers for any operating system beyond, I think, Windows 95. And it's pretty rare to see these big scanners like this these days. A lot of times it's built into your printers for consumer use. This took up a lot of desk space, so good riddance to it. Again, this is an HP C6290A, and this was USB. Just keep that over there. Now this is nothing to do with computers, but this was a $500 VHS player from Sony, and all your buttons and everything were on the swing down door. Not sure how well you can see that, but your play button and shuffle and all this other stuff was there. And you had a built-in tuner in this so that you could record television shows. You had sharpness. It's really hard to see. You had sharpness and recording levels for left and right. You had an input here for a camera or some other video playing device that you wanted to record on tape. Had a headphone jack, power and eject, and this was a really high-end. You had shuttle mode where you could turn this dial just like a professional editing machine to shuffle the video forward or backward. So this was considered a high-end VHS deck. This is a Sony stereo video cassette recorder model SLV 575UC, which was HQ. It recorded in high quality, not high definition, but HQ. This was a really, really nice VHS deck, and as far as I know, it still works. But of course, it's all SD 4:3 aspect ratio, so nobody wants them. Set that down here for now so we get some more room. Ah, here we go. This is the ubiquitous zip drive, not to be confused with zip files. We used to use floppy disks. And a floppy disk, I think I've got one in this computer over here. So this is a floppy disk. It holds 1.44 megabytes. megabytes. 1.44 megabytes. This holds 100 megabytes, and it's about the same size, a little bit, just a tiny bit wider and about twice the height. It was a proprietary format created by iOmega, company you don't really hear about anymore. I think they're gone. I don't even know what happened to them. And it allowed you to write 100 megabytes to a magnetic storage media, which wasn't that reliable. Actually, it wasn't too bad, but magnetic storage media was prone to, you know, if you got a magnet too close to it, it would erase it, or if it sat on a shelf for too long, the magnetic properties of the media degraded. And so if it sat too long on the shelf, you may not be able to read certain parts. You'd have bad sectors. Anyway, this is what it looked like, and it used to connect. So you got to remember, we didn't always have USB ports because stuff like this hadn't been invented yet. So when they said, oh, we have this idea for an external storage device using our own proprietary media that can hold, you know, 75 times a normal floppy disk, how are we going to connect it to the computer? And what the engineers came up with was to use the printer port, which we used to use these big parallel cables. And you'll see on the back, there's room for 2 of them. So what you would do is you would have your printer, right? And then you plug the cable that goes to your printer into this, and then plug this cable into your printer. So this was just in line, right? So from the computer to the zip drive, and from the zip drive to the printer. And that way you could still print. But these, sometimes they were difficult to get configured. You'd have IRQ conflicts or driver issues. And of course, a driver had to be loaded to recognize it. And a parallel port, even though it was two-way communication, it was never engineered by the developers who created it for this type of use. So it wasn't perfect technology, but it got us by. And of course, they were all blue. There was just the color of blue. This one's really dusty, as you can tell. It's been sitting around for quite some time. As I approach the camera, of course, I'm losing light, so I'll have to just see what that looks like afterwards. But there it is, and there's the back of it. I had a bunch of zip disks. This was a main storage unit for me way back in the day. Let's see what else we have in this box of fun toys here. We've got a Cyberhome DVR 1200. This is a DVD recorder, and this enables you then to, let's say, take the output of a VHS deck like the one I just put on the ground, and take the video and audio out of it, put it into this, and then put a blank DVD in, and then record your VHS tapes right onto a DVD. And then of course you had all your outputs on the back here. This would even allow you to record TV. So you have coaxial input and output. So it would go from your antenna into this, and then from this into your television. You could also hook your television up with audio and video separately, as well as S-video. And then you could also pipe it out to your stereo by running a left and right cable into your amplifier. And well, this is an input over here. This is the output. So you could, not only could you feed an input in the front, but you could feed an input in the back. And there was no editing. You basically hit play on the VHS and then hit record on this, and then you have to manually stop it. There's no way to edit it because the DVD, once you wrote on it, you wrote on it for good. But that's what we had. This is what you were, if you were fortunate enough to have the money to buy one of these, and then you didn't have to worry about those VHS tapes, which again, magnetic storage media on tape. Tape would bend as it's, you know, if the VHS tape was stored upright or even stored horizontally, the edges of the tape would bend. And over time, you get this weird sort of bend in the video in weird lines. So when you went to DVD, it was far superior. Let me give you a close-up of this one. So yeah, back in the day, this was cool stuff to have to get you away from the shoddiness of VHS. And like I said, because it's got antenna input on the back, you could record television shows on it. So that's that. Let's just wrap this up and move it over here. All right, now it looks like the rest of this stuff, it looks like computer stuff. So let's see what we have. We have what looks like an old 486 heatsink, pretty cheap junk. We have a modem. I don't know who makes it. It looks like it's a US Robotics knockoff. Looks like it's made by PC Tel, or it's got a PC Tel chip on it. And it's got a strange model number on it. The model number says, well, here, I'll just show you. It really doesn't matter who makes it, just out of curiosity. This is the card. And of course, we used ISA slots back then. And then the model, if that's going to focus, all that information is contained right in the sticker here. So that, just an old school modem. And let's see, let's just put that over there. Here's a D-Link 10100 Ethernet PCI adapter from Fry's Electronics. Apparently still in the box. This is a DFE 530TX. Kind of a neat history lesson through this stuff. This was probably about $40 back when it was purchased, I'm imagining. And of course the dollar was worth more back then than it is today, so I'm not sure what that equivalent would be today. And is it in here? Let's see. Let's see what's in here. Yeah, there's your instructions. Remember when things used to come with instructions? Oh, this isn't a D-Link. This is a... There's the installation discs for Windows 98 right there. And this has a Netgear card in it. So I'm guessing maybe the Netgear card went bad and he replaced it, or the Netgear card was slower. I don't know. They're both PCI. Not PCIe, but PCI. This is what the old Netgear card looked like. So all this stuff is built on the boards now. You don't have to add this stuff anymore, but that's the way we used to have to do it. Good memories in here, though, I'll tell you. And if you've been in the industry as long as I have, I hope that you enjoy these memories as much as I do. And like I say, it's good to kind of give them one last sort of acknowledgement before we send it off to the recycle bin. Really, nobody wants this stuff anymore. It's difficult to configure, it's finicky, drivers are impossible to find, of course. It's just evolution. Evolution of the hardware has moved on and just made this stuff obsolete. See, we got a couple of panels. This was for called a metal gearbox. This was for an external USB 3.5-inch hard drive enclosure. I don't know where the box is, but I remember these panels went on the sides. We've got a creative... Wow. Okay, this takes me back. Let me show you the way this would work. Trying to see if he's got a creative sound card in here. No, it doesn't appear that way. Okay, let me just bring this up a little closer so you can see. So on these DVD drives, which by the way was not a DVD recorder, because those were over $100 for one of those. This is a DVD reader and a CD writer, I think. And as you can see, we used to have a headphone jack and a volume control to listen to music. On the back, you had a big it's not really an IDE cable, I don't think. I believe this was a proprietary cable that had to match up with your sound card. You see how the sound card has a connector right here? This is an old-fashioned sound card, ISA, which I just dropped on the floor. So this is the old-fashioned sound card here. Anyway, so you see that connector? That would be a proprietary connector. These two had to match. And you'd plug the cable in. It was like an IDE cable from the DVD drive to the sound card. And some sound cards from Sound Blaster worked with like 3 different models, so you'd have 3 different connectors. You had to use the right one to get it to work. And then of course you had jumpers here on the back and your Molex connector for power. And we used to call this a multimedia kit. You would go to Best Buy or whatever. Computers didn't come with drives, with optical drives. So that was something you added back in the 386 days and early 486 days. And you often would buy this in a kit for around $200, somewhere around that. Gave you the sound card and the optical drive. And pretty slow at that when it did work. But then the computer was slow by today's standards. Now looking back in here, we've got another modem. This is a big one. So when we talk about how we configured things, we talk about jumpers and IRQs, and what you had to do is you would put this into what's called an ISA slot. You can see this connector is very different down here on the bottom. And then there were jumpers, and this would decide what your COM port was going to be and your interrupt request, or IRQ. And it had to have something dedicated to its own. You couldn't share it with anything else. So if you had other devices, well, every device used an interrupt request. And certain interrupt requests were reserved for certain COM ports. And you would want this. This was like a standard configuration here, which is probably like COM4. I don't know, I can't really read it. Because the computer often had 2 COM ports built in, serial port 1 and serial port 2. Those were communications ports 1 and 2, also called serial ports. And then the modem can be configured to serial port 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then an accompanying IRQ that's not in use that won't conflict. You could only use one IRQ for one device, and if you had 2 devices using the same IRQ, they would just not run reliably. They would just crash on you, and you require diagnostic. Someone would have to open the computer up. This is before the days of Google. You couldn't just Google it. You had to actually do the research and fix it yourself. And of course today with plug and play, you don't have to worry about any of that. Let's see, do we have any other modems in here? Yeah, no, yeah. This is a fax modem. This is a US Robotics. I don't see a model on this one. Let me bring this on up and show it to you. The reason I know this is a fax modem is because it's got the audio out on it. But this is what it looked like. Again, ISA connector. Your jumpers to set your COM port and IRQ. You would take the phone line running to your landline phone and plug it into the modem, and then the modem would come with a line to plug into the other jack on the modem to go back to your phone, so you could still use your phone when this wasn't in use. Obviously, if this was in use and someone in your house picked up the phone, it would interrupt the transmission. You would probably have to start over whatever you were doing and have to redial and reconnect. This was name brand stuff back in the day. And he's even got the phone cable still in the bag. We've got another sound card. A model CT4810. This is a PCI sound card. It's got a MIDI port or a game joystick port on the back of it here. And this was made by Creative Labs. So this was a more modern sound card that came a bit later after the other one I showed you. As you see, it's evolving to what is eventually now built onto your motherboard that's better quality than these cards. Here is a couple of video cards. Both are made by S3. Anybody remember S3? This is the S3 Trio 3D. This was AGP. And this is the S3 375/775 PCI Verge 3D DX, 4 megabyte of memory. And this is the VS3 T3D Trio AGP, 4 megabytes of memory. Megabytes. This is what we used to game with. We had cards like these that we would use for gaming. That's the AGP card, as you can tell from the connector. And then there's your PCI card there. And all your model information and such is there. And of course, these were just single VGA outputs. If you wanted to run dual monitors, you had to install multiple cards and configure them so they weren't sharing the same IRQ. If that was even possible. Actually, I don't think on these. That was only done with the ISA. Once we went to PCI and AGP, you didn't have to deal with that. But you only had one AGP port. So if this may have been why he has one AGP and one PCI. He may have had this card installed as his main card and then installed this one as a secondary card so he could use two monitors. Or he just came from two different computers. Okay. Wow. Wow. When motherboards came out with like the Pentium 2, they used a different socket. They used a socket that looks like a graphics card socket or an AGP or PCI Express. It was a bit longer and it has the split in it. And then your CPU would just fit down in there like a game cartridge from an old game console. And then someone got it in their head that you could take a regular like style chip like we used to use, a regular style chip, put it into a socket, and then set the socket down into the CPU socket. It's pretty strange, because normally, and I'll show you a picture of what the CPU would look like. It was normally an enclosed unit, and you just plugged it in and you were done. It already had the fan built onto it. This was like an engineering kludge where you could take a different kind of CPU socket, this kind, and convert it into this adapter so that it would fit into a motherboard that didn't have this kind of a socket. So that's what that looks like. I completely forgot this hardware even existed. But in that way you were able to upgrade your machine to something either for less money or to something more powerful than it was designed for. And again, that was back in the old Pentium 2 days. What else? We have a couple of Altic Lansing speakers. These were really good speakers too. We got another optical drive here. This is a 52X CD drive. That's all it is. Jumper on the back for master or slave configuration, IDE. It's got a big LED right here for reading and for just reading when it's in use. A headphone jack and a volume control was standard in those days. Also has a button to skip the next track or to stop and eject. That was this button. So they were using these more like audio DVD players that you would have in a stereo system. Not the way we use them today, if we use them at all anymore today. A lot of people have just phased them out, doing everything through streaming. And finally, what is this? Oh, this is a Magnavox DVD player for video, so that you would hook this up to your television. It's a pretty standard $100 video DVD player, and you would hook this up to your TV using the component cables, which are video, audio left, audio right, or you could do S-video out. There was something called Super Video, S-video, which was what we considered to be higher quality back then, which is of course not compared to what we have today with HD or 4K or even 8K now. I mean, this video on YouTube was higher quality than any of this stuff you've seen can handle. Now, when I first started into computers were about this big, maybe a little bit taller. This one's pretty close to the early 90s when I first started professionally repairing them. And let's get this up on the Lazy Susan so we can spin it around and give you a good look at it. It's heavy. There we go. So you'll see the power supplies always went on top, and you had power in and power out in case you wanted to power something else like a monitor. Some monitors you could just run a cable from your monitor to the back of your PSU, and then you got less things to plug into the wall, which was kind of a good idea until your power supply went out. This looks like it's got a graphics card installed. There's our parallel port, serial port. This has USB on it. Of course, when I first started, USB was quite a few years away. Let me step around and get this opened up. Let's see what's inside of this bad boy. I haven't looked at the inside of any of these. I thought I'd wait till I was on camera and you'd get a genuine reaction. So you first started on these old cases, you had to take the top off, kind of like Darth Vader's helmet. If I can get the top off. Oh, come on. There it is. So the top comes off. Up here is where your floppy drive mounts. This floppy drive is all hooked up. Spin it back around here. Looks like we've got a Plextor Plex writer. It's an 8432, which is interesting. Again, the headphone jack, volume control. Then this is a more modern type of DVD reader writer that we use today. Again, another zip drive. This was an internal zip drive, which came out a bit later, still reading the same 100 megabyte disk. This is your eject button. Oh no, this is a zip 250. So this would read the 100 megabyte zip disk and the 250 megabyte zip disk. They were the same size and shape, but they were encoded in such a way that you needed to read a 250 out of a 250, and you could also read anything smaller than a 250 that was a zip disk in the zip 250 drive. If you had the zip 100 drive, like that blue one, you would only read the 100s. It wouldn't read the 250s. It's like anything else. The newer technology works with the older technology. So anyway, let's pull these side panels off and see what's inside. Do I want that one? I think I want the other one. I think it's, yeah, this is the side I want. So let's take this side off. Now this is all steel. This is not made out of aluminum. This thing's very heavy. You could really hurt yourself with stuff like this. This should, if memory recalls, I think this lifts, thought it lifted straight up. Oh no, it slides back. All right. Wow, it's in a groove the whole way back. That is a serious heavy piece of metal. Heavy. Let's see what we have inside. There was no cable management. There was nothing you could do other than just try and jam it all in there. That's sort of the way it was back in the day. We've got a couple of case fans right up here, some smaller, I don't know what those are, 80 millimeter maybe, two of them up here that are blowing air out here. I'm sure they're loud. We've got a PowMax ATX switching power supply, which doesn't seem to have any voltage. I don't know what size power supply that is. This is our two optical drives here, fed by the IDE cable. Our floppy drive, floppy connectors. We've got a hard drive here. We have what appears to be an Intel chip here. It's maybe like a Pentium 4 based on this heatsink design. We've got an AGP graphics card here, not sure what that is. Speaker, another fan up front. And of course the power supply has a fan in the back and a fan in the front. This thing, I'm sure, if we turn it on, is going to be very loud. The motherboard is, it's an Intel motherboard, which Intel doesn't make motherboards anymore. I wonder what kind of RAM this thing has in it. Let's take a look. That might tell us a little bit more about it. All right, this RAM is DDR266. So this would have been original DDR memory. This stick is 512 megabytes. I'm sure it cost a pretty penny back in the day. PC 2100 speed. Compare that to the PC 30,000 speed we use now. Well, I guess it's you know, it's all par for the course based on the age of the machine. And let's see if I can get this memory back in here, because I'm thinking this machine will still boot up if we turn it on. Lord knows what's on it. So I am not going to turn it on camera and potentially expose my customers' information. It is my job to dispose of this. And I just want to make sure that I get a nice... Oh, I guess it's not going to turn on without any of this hooked up. Oh, actually it will. You know why? Back in the day, when we used these kind of power supplies, the switch is hooked directly to the power supply. You hear how hard that switch clicks? It's actually physically turning this power supply on and off. Modern motherboards, the power supply is instructed to turn on or off through a connection on the motherboard. So that's why when you turn a computer off, a modern computer, it's still got power running through it. But a computer like this, when you shut it off, it was off. So, yeah, good times. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Let's get this out of here. Oh, also, above the power supply, what this is a rack for four more hard drives. Can go here. And then, of course, you had room for 3 hard drives here. You had room for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 devices up front. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Plus, you had a 3.5-inch slot here, which you could often use for a floppy drive. So you could really jam this thing full of storage. And remember, drives were very small in capacity compared to today. So it was pretty common to need multiple drives if you had a lot of data. All right, let's set this one down. Let's go to the next one. This, I have no idea what this is. It's got a sticker on it that says Intel Inside Celeron. He's got a floppy disk. No idea what that's for. And inside, we're looking at a MS6309 motherboard, version 2. This must be AMD based, I'm thinking. Well, no, I guess it's Celeron. It's got a VIA chipset on it, which is why I'm leaning that way. The power supply is kind of blocking your view there. Let's take that power supply out so I can show it to you. Come on out. Ooh, it's temperature controlled. All right, now we can get a better look at what's in the motherboard there. And it looks like we've got some leaking capacitors on this board as well. So that is gonna be shot. All right, so let's get this one out of the way. And let's get to the last one here. And this is an old compact. And this unit is an old compact Presario. It's an SR1408HM. It's a Celeron processor again. It was designed for Windows XP. Let's take a quick look on the inside and see what's in there. Well, it's interesting. It's got an ASUS fan on here. Maybe it's an ASUS board. I don't know. It's a P4GV-LA motherboard. And the caps on this one look good. He's got a modem installed down below, right down here. Some of the modems only had 1 jack instead of 2, since people started having multiple landlines for their home, one for the computer and one for the regular phone, so they would quit getting interrupted in their phone calls. And wow, look at this old hard drive. You got to see this, guys. Let's see if I can get this connector off of here. Come on. Come on. Out. Out, out, out. Yeah. Thank goodness for SATA cables. These things were a pain in the butt. As I recall, you had to take the front off and the hard drive came out this way. So I think, trying to remember how we used to do that. You push this in. Is that it? And then squeeze these tabs. Somewhere there's some tabs. There's one. There's another one. And there's one. Here we go. And my memory hasn't failed me too much. Dust. That's free. You know what? That's disgusting. Give me just a second. Let's take care of this right now. That'll help a little bit. All right. Now, let me see what this hard drive is. You should be able to slide that forward. I think you got to pull this tab and then push forward. Here it comes. Come on. Look at this funky thing. It's an old Seagate hard drive here. Take a quick look at that. It's kind of surprising how thin it is. Of course, still IDE with the Molex connector because that's the way we rolled. And very dusty. So anyway, I thought you'd enjoy this trip down memory lane. You might want to Google some of those model numbers and kind of look at the specs of this stuff. It's all pretty interesting stuff. And it's interesting also to see how far we've come in just a few short years. Back then, and even on some cases today, you'll see that they give you spare screws right here. That's what that's for. So if you were going to add more hard drives, your hard drive screws were screwed into the front of the case. Most consumers had no idea that was there, and they remained completely untouched from the factory. Very common. And the Best Tech power supply, which HP and Compaq like to use those. Oh, and there's my there's front panel removal instructions right here on the bottom of the case. I didn't see that till just now. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.